We are an occupied planet. Humanity has been enslaved by an alien race, the so-called Legislators, and through the help of the human collaborator unity government, they are now stripping our once beautiful world of every valuable resource we have. Not just rare earth metals, but our people as well. They're not just hollowing out our planet, but our very future as a species. So the movie Captive State is very light on details of the world it's built, but I've done my best to find information on everything, so we'll start with who are the Legislators? Well, this alien race revealed themselves to us in late 2018, early 2019, and their actual name is unknown, with only the highest members of the Unity government having access to such information. The start of their control over Earth began with a two-stage assault against humanity, but unlike most people expect with an alien invasion, thinking it's all huge lasers and explosives, it was far more of a cloak and dagger operation. The first phase was the disruption and shut-off of the global communications and the power grids, sending us back hundreds of years in technological terms. Humanity being so dependent on energy, and with our gadgets not working, we simply didn't know what to do. It was mass panic, and we were unable to truly muster a response. They outplayed us beyond what we expected. Then our elites of our nations, and now the members of the Unity government, were then contacted and told to submit to the legislators' control, and in return the power grid would be turned back on and humanity would be allowed to live, but under new, strict conditions. Phase 2 was the actual implementation of the occupation, in which the legislators took control over the planet, with a full worldwide military surrender and disarmament of all major forces, with the Unity government building its own militarised forces, think like SWAT teams, intelligence service, civil enforcers, basically police that do their bidding. Also, all worldwide assets from small shops to huge global national companies to infrastructure were now directly under Unity government control. It was the formation of a single worldwide global government that answered to their new alien puppet masters. Treaties were also implemented, more of a symbolic gesture than an actual binding contract, as at any time the aliens can just do as they wish. But the Unity government talks of their treaties and how the legislators respect these conditions imposed. Newsflash, they don't. These treaties were pretty much signing over our planet in return for us not being wiped out, but it may lead to that anyway. This was then followed by the construction of large closed zones being made in all major cities across the globe, surrounded by large walls, watchtowers and cameras. And the Unity government forces protected these areas with the trespassers will be shot mentality. No warnings here. The closed zones also had special underground habitats constructed for the legislators so they could rule from our planet itself. These habitats are massive facilities, very deep underground. The actual depth is unknown, but with the information gathered from human envoys who had to go to speak with the aliens directly, it must be very far into the Earth, as they have to go down specially built elevators, so the depth might be hundreds of meters to maybe even a mile deep. So these protect the aliens from nuclear weapon strength blasts. These habitats are necessary for the aliens to live without specialist protective equipment. Down below they can live, as they do on their homeworld as far as we can tell, and they're safe to conduct their plans without fear of attack, well, not from conventional attacks at least. The humans who have access to these habitats are in the highest positions of the Unity government, and before they enter they must pass multiple heavily defended checkpoints and go through a cleaning process. Rumours have it the aliens don't like our smell, and once they pass this process they're fitted with breathing equipment, as the aliens' environment in their habitats is toxic to us, as is Earth's atmosphere to the aliens. It makes me wonder if they will attempt to terraform Earth to suit their needs, but so far we have no inclination that this is happening. But I imagine research teams that are more allied with the resistance forces are checking ground and air samples daily just in case. The legislators' biology is very different from our own. They're large in size, around 7 or 8 feet tall when upright. They're quadrupedal, moving on all 4 of their limbs, which seem to have claws or sharpened ends potentially designed for digging and can be used to slash and cut. They're strong, they're able to tear off car doors and could savage a human with minimal effort. Our atmosphere is utterly hostile to them and they must wear protective suits to survive on Earth when they're not in their habitats. These suits are advanced technology far beyond their own means. They're covered in spikes that provide a light protective deterrent, being able to damage a human who attacks by piercing through them. These spikes may also be used for intimidation purposes. And the alien suits seem to provide the full range of movement, and they don't penalise how the aliens operate when wearing them. Well, they don't penalise their movement, should I say. They're able to, run, jump, attack. It's not like when we wear certain suits, it kind of makes it difficult for us to move sometimes. These standard suits do seem to be pretty weak in durability. They're able to be ripped open by a human with the bare hands if they really go for it, and they could easily be punctured by a bullet or bladed weapon. They're not combat suits, they're purely for survival. For communications, they speak in what sounds like clicks and screeches to us, but human translators are capable of understanding the language, but devices are needed to help translate this, and obviously for us to speak to the legislators, we need devices as we're not able to do these clicks and screeches easily, or maybe not at all. It's not really shown in the film. The clicks may possibly be a type of echolocation, like bats or dolphins, to help them navigate in low visibility surroundings. This is backed up by their eyes, which are deep set, glowing slightly, most likely adapted for low light vision. Definitely with their deep habitats, they are tunnelers and diggers, a bit like ants that dwell underground most of the time. So they're more insectoid in their nature, but obviously they can go out of these tunnels, but we don't know what their home world's like, so it's hard to kind of say exactly how they act. There is an alternative form of a legislator that we know of, referred to as hunters. And by the treaties signed, they're not supposed to actually be deployed to Earth, but in dangerous situations they are. They have been sighted on several occasions. They walk upright in some kind of power armour. It's extremely durable and has advanced sensors with 4 camera-style eyes for targeting. And most likely these are linked to their weapons, able to track and pick out targets to deal with them easily. A single shot of this weapon can cause a human to explode into a cloud of gore, and their power armour makes them very strong. They seem unfazed by any threat, and I imagine it would take high caliber or anti-tank weapons to do significant damage to these hunters. When deployed, they're accompanied by human soldiers who seem to be very comfortable working with the aliens, and it's most likely these are elite troops, either ex-special forces who have been co-opted into service, or humans who have been selected and trained for this specific purpose. Whatever the situation, if the hunters are deployed, it's to deal with a major issue for the legislators, and a brutal response of force is bound to follow. In such a situation, unless heavily armed and outnumbering the aliens, go to ground. There's no winning this fight. This leads me to the weapons used by the aliens. They seem to cause a pressure wave as no plasma beam or projectile is visible, and even though it's a wave, it's very accurate, able to shoot at a single target in a crowd. The weapon seems to explode a human when hit, and I doubt body armour or protective gear would work to stop the weapon's force. The weapons can also be used against occupants inside a vehicle, with them being popped open, but it only causes limited damage to the vehicle itself. We don't know the full extent of these weapons' capabilities, and only the aliens are in possession of them, and if larger variations are made, they could be used to kill entire groups of people in a single shot. And the human collaborator troops that work with the aliens use conventional weapons. They don't have these advanced weapons. Obviously, the aliens don't want to risk their tech falling into the wrong hands, which makes a lot of sense. So now the legislators have arrived, and the invasion phase is over. It was a soft invasion, not much conflict, more civil unrest, but with humanity's leaders and military forces bending the knee, there was little the civilian population could do to fight back. Though resistance did occur with guerrilla-style warfare and attacks occurring, but ultimately causing little damage to the aliens and their plans. So now the Unity government's main aim is control over the human population and extraction of resources off-world. And from the information we see, the resource extraction has increased 10 times what it was before the aliens arrived. They are literally stripping the planet of anything they need, and they will leave us with a husk. With a high-level Unity government member in the movie saying we have a chance to get off this dying rock, which is ironic because it's only dying because of their actions helping the aliens. And I can't even blame humanity bending the knee at first with the fact that we would be sent back to pre-industrial times without power and communications. It's terrifying. But if we had chose to fight, it seems the legislators were capable of large-scale destruction, but they lacked the numbers to take the planet with the human infrastructure and population intact. If we had resisted, it's my belief that the population is a viable resource to the aliens, and we could have got better terms at the very least, and potentially caused enough trouble that the aliens left us alone. Obviously, there's a risk that we'll be wiped out, but it looks like we're heading that way anyway. So, it's a kind of situation of, die on your feet or live on your knees. In terms of population control, there are many precautions the Unity government and their alien puppet masters have implemented. First, the jamming and monitoring of digital communications, with mobile phones and other modern devices being unable to communicate with each other, and the production, sale and possession of these devices is prohibited. They also collect and strip these devices of memory cards and information storage and scan them, collecting text, pictures and videos. For what purpose we're not exactly sure, but I think it's information gathering to learn about us, but also it's useful for getting images and details on the population for things such as facial recognition and tracking by security services. And the general population must use older analog technology like landline phones and newspapers for getting news, but these are also monitored. Exceptions are made for the Unity government and security services who have access to modern tech supported by the aliens' assets. This gives the Unity government a huge edge in terms of organisation and coordination, and resistance cells have to be extremely careful as there always are eyes and ears waiting for them to slip up, and if they do, they're going to get caught, interrogated and killed. All humans in the cities and urban areas are bugged. They literally have alien parasites implemented into their necks. This goes from civilians all the way up to high-ranking Unity government members. This provides the security services and aliens the ability to track targets and check IDs at checkpoints with scanners. And these bugs can also be scanned by aerial drones, but this does alert the human that they're being marked in a sense, but by then it's normally too late. And if someone dies, the implant notifies the authorities. This is very useful. For instance, if someone murders a police officer, they will immediately know they're dead and the area where the bug went offline. And to subvert these bugs and get past the tracking to trick the security services takes a lot of skilled individuals. You also need a dead person's parasites and very specialist equipment to achieve this. And even then, over time, the security services would catch on to this sabotage and track the culprits down. The security services have many tools to suppress the population. The main one is the constant surveillance from cameras and drones, combined with the bugs. It allows for the tracking of people's movements at all times. The only limiting factor is the sheer amount of people being tracked can overwhelm the security services' processing capabilities. So they have to have an idea of who to focus on to make use of the information effectively. And with the information they can conduct regular raids and crackdowns on everything from people of interest being abducted and interrogated, and any type of protest or strikes immediately broken up, and if resistance happens, it's put down with extreme violence. These drones are large in number, being around 1 foot in length and width, able to float around the skies indefinitely. They can scan humans and most likely listen into conversations. This gives the security services near unlimited surveillance, and they act a little like a swarm of bees, hovering in large groups, and if an issue is noticed, one will dispatch itself to investigate. Curfews are in place with civilians not allowed out at night, and the only exception would be for specific jobs and Unity government members. And if you found out after curfew, the punishment is either arrest or a good beating would be expected. It's brutal, and the curfew keeps potentially illegal activities more difficult. It also allows the Unity government to enact things in a more secretive manner while people are off the streets. So for instance, if they need to move troops for an operation, it's less likely to be noticed because obviously they lack digital communications. Most things are spread through word of mouth. So by the time someone says, oh look, there was 6 armoured vehicles with troops moving down Main Street, they've already bypassed and got to where they need to be. Also, as we mentioned earlier, if a situation gets too volatile, elite forces can be brought in, and the aliens with their advanced tech and ships are most likely capable of laying waste to entire portions of a city with a single vessel. And we even see massive walker-style machines, a bit like Titans out of 40k, with a massive shoulder-mounted cannon. Now we don't know what these are being built for. Is it to go off-world to fight enemies or maybe provide security on other worlds? Or is this the fate of Earth once they have what they need? Will all these machines be turned against the human population to exterminate us so that we can't become a problem in the future? With absolute control over resources and infrastructure, the Unity government is able to decide what is available to the population, and loyalists to the regime are looked after with a luxurious life. But the average citizen has a pretty basic life and poverty is rife on the lower end. This keeps people in line in fear of ending up without a roof over their head or food in their bellies. And bribes and rewards are offered to people to give up information on dissidents and rebels. Propaganda is used heavily by the Unity government, with talk about how our legislators have brought mankind together. No more war, crime is down and more lies. The fact is mankind is under an alien boot and no one is able to contradict the narrative. And the constant bombardment via radio, newspapers, rallies and television, which is all Unity government controlled. And over time, the strongest minds are the only ones able to resist and keep the truth of the real situation alive in their heads. Most people will just go with the narrative, it just happens. And it reminds me a little bit like the population of the Soviet Union. which would inform the police on one another. I remember a statistic about 50% of people had informed on their neighbours over their lifetime, which is pretty scary, but this is a similar situation in captive state. For civilians outside urban areas like towns or cities, there is a chance to go under the radar, but with the laws passed by the unity government, these individuals would be classed as terrorists or agitators, and if they encounter security services, punishment could range from being imprisoned to being shot on sight. It really depends on the situation, I guess. The punishment for breaking the laws for civilians is also a major intimidation factor, with being sent off-world being a potential fate. And this most likely would be an absolutely hellish existence, being sent to a world absolutely hostile to our biology, doing back-breaking labour and living in a very brutal and meagre life. And the prisoners sent off-world might be used as test subjects for weapons or even operations. Only time will tell what has happened. We may never know. Some people may be duped into volunteering for off-world duties. These are likely the poorest and most desperate, looking for a sense of hope in a bleak and decaying world. I, for one, would not recommend it. One thing to note, there are no penalties tied to having children as far as we know. We even see a young child in the movie. So unlike in Half-Life 2, where the Combine actively stop the reproductive cycle, the legislators seem unfazed by us having children. Maybe it's because we have a long-term place in their plan, or is it simply because even if we doubled our population, it wouldn't matter? Once they're done with us, they can either leave us to rot, or they can just wipe us out easily. We don't really know, but the fact that we're able to have children is a positive thing, but it still doesn't really give us much knowledge of the intentions of the legislators long term. The legislators seem to be few in their numbers on Earth, and most people have never seen one with their own eyes. Even in the unity government, a direct meeting is very rare, and only done for special occasions or if a major issue has arisen. They tend to stay in their habitats or move around in their ships, being out of reach of humanity. And when they are meeting a human, they normally have a large security detail. It would take a well-orchestrated plan to infiltrate and hit them, but it can be done. And these limited numbers lead me to several theories to why the legislators actually came to Earth. My first theory is they lack the population they need to conduct operations that require mass labour. Now, some people will point towards the use of drones, but we only see basic surveillance drones under their control. So my guess is they don't trust any form of advanced robotics or AI, maybe due to some past issues or anything from a cultural or religious view. As we know so little about the aliens themselves, we don't know what they believe. So when they discovered Earth with billions of people they can enslave and exploit, it might have been too big a chance to pass up. This also goes into the fact that the resources they're extracting are not rare once you have access to space travel. With so many planets and asteroids available with massive amounts of resources, this doesn't make too much sense. But maybe it's a technological issue, as the way we think is not how the aliens think. Maybe they progressed with advanced faster than light technology and amazing weapons and ships, but they haven't produced automated labour or machinery for things like mining and, extraction of resources. They obviously have a different technological view to us. And their homeworld might have a completely different balance of resources, so their tech grew in a very different path to ours. It's hard to say, but it's definitely interesting to think about. And obviously chuck your thoughts in here because I'm sure people will have lots of thoughts on this part. Another theory is the legislators simply do not want to do lower forms of work. They view themselves as the top elite, and they would rather subjugate a population and use them as a resource than work to improve their tech and do work themselves. As in the habitats, they seem to mainly be giving orders, nothing comes out of them of use that we know of. So it might be they have grown decadent and see themselves above many forms of work, even if they would be more efficient than humans. They're simply not interested in working. The legislators might also not be the top of the hierarchy. We see two different forms, the standard alien in the spiky survival suits, and the hunters, but they're also could be bioengineers or augmentated. Or even because they're insectoid, it might be a certain caste, a bit like how ants have workers, soldiers, and the queen at the top. Basically different subspecies. And during the investigation into the attack on the aliens at Soldiers Field, we see on the screens a different kind of blurry image of an alien. It doesn't look the same as the standard one. It's hard to tell, you can't really see very clearly, but it could be a third type. It could be a higher part of the species. So it's really hard to tell what's going on, but it's definitely something to think about. The Unity government itself is the main managing body of Earth, and these collaborator humans are the ones who take the legislators' orders and implement them on humanity. These individuals tend to be made up from pre-invasion politicians, government employees, businessmen, and security agency and law enforcement personnel. The aliens were able to bribe, promise benefits, or threaten these people into compliance, and in return they surrendered our planet and our liberties. The worst element of the Unity government is that while millions suffer in poverty, they live in luxury in the best housing, eating top quality food. They want for nothing. The gap between rich and poor has never been higher, and many seem to want to follow the aliens off-world and serve indefinitely. They have truly turned their backs on humanity. They're not just collaborators, they've actually embraced the aliens' ways. One major difference between the Unity government and our own in this day is that the alien masters don't tolerate failure. There's no political spin they can use to get out the repercussions of not achieving the goals that the aliens have set, be that a certain amount of resources needing to be extracted or keeping the security of the safe zone intact. If a Unity government personnel fails, they will either be killed, imprisoned either here or off-world, but be assured the aliens don't tolerate failure. So ironically, they have a far more effective government than we do, but it's literally just serving alien masters. But say that our governments don't really serve us either, so, they're maybe probably more similar than I like to think. Damn. The ships the aliens possess are massive constructs, very different from standard sci-fi ships. They remind me of a sideways termite hill. They're a bit like small floating mountains in a sense. Made from unknown materials, and they're produced off-world. So the only people who've seen inside of a ship are the unfortunate humans being sent off-world. And in this case, they've only seen a small amount, probably a cargo area. They won't be seeing any vital areas of the ships. We see one ship drop off the Legislators at Soldiers Field, and they're capable of working in the void of space, and very low to the planet. They can literally get down to the ground, so they don't seem to be bothered much by how much gravity there is or the atmosphere. They seem to be able to basically move freely, very effectively. They have very advanced propulsion and amazing control. They're very advanced. Whether these ships have weapons, it's unknown, but it's likely they do. And when the hunters are dropped off what looks like crashing asteroids or meteorites, you see it in the scene when they kind of fly in. These are most likely some kind of drop pods launched from these vessels. They come in fast from orbit, and it gives the hunters the element of surprise. They can land anywhere on Earth, and they land with quite a lot of force. It creates an explosion. So these may also be able to be used as kind of like weapons as well. They could probably load them with like some kind of explosive, or the hunter could literally like crash next to a position to damage people and then come out fighting. And the ships just kind of float there around the cities, a bit like an intimidation tactic to remind us who's in charge, but also always to be ready to respond with hunters or weapons. And, these warships are very common in sight. There's a lot of them, and we don't know how many aliens are needed to crew them, but the fact remains we have demilitarized the human military. We lack fighter jets or anti-aircraft weapons, so we don't really have a way to combat these ships. So if all that war happens, the aliens control the skies, basically. So a major disadvantage straight away for us. And depending on the power, the weapons of the ships they have, the capabilities, we could see a single ship wiping a city off a map over a day. So it's quite scary. So that's Captive State and all the information I could gather on things that I thought was important. It's a very good film. It's not so much an action film. There are action bits. It's more of a thinker's film. A bit like a kind of spy film meets an alien occupation. Definitely worth a watch. I'd say have a watch after this if you haven't seen it. Obviously, if you have seen it, give me your thoughts on it. But, I really like it. Probably won't get a sequel, which is a shame because it definitely deserves one. But, I'm surprised the game studio hasn't looked at it and thought this could make quite a cool game. A bit of like a stealth guerrilla warfare game, kind of like Freedom Fighters meets kind of XCOM kind of thing. But I guess XCOM 2 has that kind of guerrilla thing, but that's a bit different. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's been great bringing it to you, something a bit different. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a beautiful evening, guys. Take it easy.